bakit natin ito itiyatago? At bakit pa natin sinasabi na wala? Hindi lang no comment, nagsisinungaling pa tayo. Kaya sana po, magdalawang isip na, kahit sino man sa gobyerno na magsasabi sa akin na ako ay sinungaling, hindi po ako sinungaling. Kung tayo po ay tunay na transparent sa taong bayan, bago ang approval ng 2026 budget, sana maipaliwanag ng Kongreso bakit itinaas ang sariling budget. The most important thing, I think, is the manner in which this was presented to me, that it was not put in writing what the purpose for the meeting was, and that I was asked to discuss this highly confidential matter in the lounge, and the following thing that Attorney Jolina told me that I can put in a sworn affidavit. She said, Kong, this is your incentive. I would like to know why she said, this is your incentive. This was when the 2026 budget was being finalized. Sorry, hindi pala naka-project yung PowerPoint. Okay. Sorry, if I can reread this. Here's the Viber of Attorney Jolina. September 30, 2025. Good morning po, VC Leandro Leviste. This is Attorney Jolina from the office of Chair Mika Swansing. May I call po? And she said, can we meet in the lounge? And didn't say precisely for what. And she showed me this printout listing MAIP, TUPAD, AX, FMR, DA, DepEd, NIA, other soft DPWH, totaling 151 million pesos, with a form on the right side of what I wanted to avail of. And she said, this is your incentive. So again, I want to ask, what did she mean by this is your incentive? And why is this being given to members of Congress right before the October approval of the 2026 budget? Is it my incentive to vote for the budget? Because the assistance from my constituents is conditional on my approving the budget in toto? And out of transparency, I want to know how this is being allocated. And what is the incentive of every member of Congress? Because, please excuse that a lot of information circulates in the House, but on the top right is the incentive of another member of Congress, 250 million. And you can see the MAIP, TUPAD, AX, FMR, others, and DPWH. And maybe there are others that have bigger amounts. I'm not complaining that our amounts differ. But I think the public deserves to know what is the system of incentives. Now, I'll say the reason why the message to me was sent was VC Leandro Leviste. This is my incentive also, given my position as a vice chair of APRO. By the way, there are other benefits being given to vice chairs of APRO. And there are other incentives being given to people who are maybe a senior member of Congress. Among the vice chairs of APRO, it's not all the same incentive. And because this is public money, I want to know what is the total allocation of every member of Congress for MAIP, TUPAD, AX, FMR, classrooms, and other allocables. Before, there was no discussion on the allocables in the DPWH budget. Now, there is. But there should also be disclosure on the allocation of MAIP, TUPAD, AIX, FMR. There's even a new presidential assistance for farmers and fisherfolk where 10 billion pesos will be given for around 1.4 million farmers at 7,000 pesos each. I want to know how much of that's going to be allocated to each district. Is it based on need? Or is it based on what Attorney Jolina told me, as I will put in a sworn statement, that this is my incentive? Secondly, there are other incentives given to members of Congress that coincide with the approval of the budget on second reading and third reading in October, and the approval of the BICAM ratification coinciding also with Christmas. But I wanted to discuss a much more financially significant figure that deserves to be disclosed to the Filipino people before the approval of the 2026 budget. The House of Representatives increased the internal budget of the House of Representatives from 17.7 billion pesos to 27.7 billion pesos, an approximately 10 billion peso increase, slightly less. And I will post, of course, the exact figures also after this. I'm not saying that the House of Representatives' budget, from the NEP to the GAB, should not be increased by almost 10 billion pesos. But this is the important point. There was no debate on the increase of 10 billion pesos by the House of its own budget. So therein are two issues. The first is there is no public disclosure of why it is being increased and no details on where the increase will go. The second point is simply logical. You're increasing your own budget. There is an inherent conflict of interest. When you are increasing your own budget, there is an inherent conflict of interest. That should not be a controversial thing for me to point out. All the more, there should be public disclosure on where it will go, and there should be an even higher burden of proof that this almost 10 billion peso increase is needed. Who will be the check and balance if we are approving and increasing our own budget? We're not even approving what the executive submitted in the NEP. We are increasing it. So it's one thing if there was a NEP submission that is approved without debate, but we increased the budget with no announcement that this was being increased and no debate on the floor. Other agencies with smaller amounts need to go through debate. This was not debated. It was just increased. Why was there an increase of 10 billion pesos with no debate on the floor and no opportunity for any member of Congress to ask where this 10 billion pesos will go? It happens that the majority of this increase goes into MOOE, or maintenance and other operating expenses, which we can see here in the NEP on the left is approximately 10.7 billion pesos. And then on the bottom right, the gap is approximately 18.5 billion pesos. So you have an almost 8 billion peso increase in MOOE. And I have asked, and I have not yet been given, a breakdown of what will be the 18.578 billion peso MOOE budget of the House of Representatives will go. I am still doing research on where this MOOE of the House has always gone. So because I've already covered a lot, maybe you will allow me to save my findings for another day. And I'm not saying it's wrong, but I'm saying the process is wrong. We increased our budget by almost 10 billion, of which almost 8 billion was in MOOE. And there is no debate or explanation on where this almost 8 billion pesos increase in MOOE will go. The executive set the budget at this amount, supposedly because it was already sufficient. And yet, we increased it to be above what the executive said was sufficient. So where will this almost 8 billion peso increase in MOOE go? I will put it in terms that can be well understood by the Filipino people. If there are 318 members of Congress and we increase our budget by almost 10 billion pesos, we increased the budget of Congress by an amount that is equivalent to approximately 31 million pesos per congressman. This is not like increasing the DPWH budget, where the official response is that the budget goes into DPWH projects and there is no prima facie evidence that members of Congress have any benefit on this budget. There is no prima facie evidence that members of Congress benefit from the DPWH budget. But the budget of Congress for MOOE goes to members of Congress. And perhaps not equally. Because if you do the numbers, if there's a 10 billion peso increase for a 318 member body, that is approximately the House increased its budget by 31 million pesos per congressman, above the level of what the executive proposed, and there was no debate, and there is naturally a conflict of interest, so there should be even more debate on this. And no one is asking where the 31 million pesos per congressman will go. I have said that I have not received, I have not taken, I have not collected neither my salary nor my office budget. When I say I do not collect my office budget, I am referring to my MOOE, because I have reservations with the MOOE of the House in general that I will save for another time. But I will just leave that question for the public to ask Congress to explain. I think the public wants to know. Itinaas ng Kongreso ang sariling budget ng 10 billion pesos, katumbas ng 31 million pesos kada congressman na walang debate. Saan napupunta ang 31 million pesos per congressman budget increase ng House sa 2026 budget? Sana bago maaprubahan ang 2026 budget, magbibigay ang Kongreso ng paliwanag. Una, saan mapupunta ang 10 billion pesos na katumbas ng 31 million pesos kada congressman? At bakit hindi ito pa ipinaliwanag sa taong bayan? And I can say this because I have not collected my MOOE. And I wish that other members of Congress will also express this point, that it should at least be discussed. Even if they collect their own MOOE, they should be free to question it. But I mentioned this at the same breath that I talk about my experience being shown a piece of paper by Attorney Jolina of my incentive a week before budget approval. Because I'm sorry to draw the conclusion, but maybe the 31 million peso increase per congressman is part of the incentive to approve the budget. And now, another time we'll discuss our findings of where it goes. So, to end this then, and to connect it back to our theme for today, which is allocables, there's 400 billion pesos of DPWH allocables. There's, as we can see here, also a lot of non-DPWH allocables. This is all public funds, and I want to know how much is the allocable of every member of Congress and for every government agency to practice the same level of transparency that Secretary Vince has been pushing for in the DPWH by disclosing the allocation per district of MAIP, TUPAD, AIX, farm-to-market roads, classrooms. I am not a hypocrite. I admit that to serve my district, we're trying to get as much budget as we can for each of these things, especially classrooms. And I'm being transparent about this kasi wala akong itinatago. Kasi para sa mga mamamayan po na lang naman ng aking distrito ito at hindi para sa akin. Kaya kung hindi tayo transparent, kung hanggang ngayon, hindi ito inaamin na may ganitong sistema ng allocable, hindi lang sa DPWH, kung hindi pati sa ibang mga ahensya ng gobyerno, bakit natin ito itiyatago? At bakit pa natin sinasabi na wala? Hindi lang no comment, nagsisinungaling pa tayo. Kaya sana po, magdalawang isip na, kahit sino man sa gobyerno na magsasabi sa akin na ako ay sinungaling, hindi po ako sinungaling. Ang nagsasabi na ang mga congressman ay hindi binibigyan ng 150 million pesos plus insertion sa DPWH budget sa NEP pa lang ang nagsisinungaling. Ang nagsasabi na walang ganitong sistema ng mga allocables sa DOH, DOLE, DSWD, DA, DepEd at NIA ang nagsisinungaling. At kung tayo po ay tunay na transparent sa taong bayan, bago ang approval ng 2026 budget, sana maipaliwanag ng Kongreso bakit itinaas ang sariling budget ng almost 10 billion pesos o 31 million pesos per congressman na walang paliwanag kung saan ito mapupunta. Any questions?